The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, will meet his Russian counterpart in Geneva on Friday for face-to-face talks on Ukraine. It comes as America warns Russia could invade Ukraine at any moment. The government in Tonga says some of the country's outer islands have been severely damaged by the weekend's volcanic eruption and tsunami. All houses are said to have been destroyed on Mango Island. Boris Johnson has denied he was warned about a party at Downing Street that broke lockdown rules. The civil servant leading the inquiry will now speak to Mr Johnson's former advisor, Dominic Cummings, who's made the claim. And the head of the World Health Organization has said that although deaths have stabilised in countries with the Omicron variant, more could still be done to reduce infections.
Microsoft agreed to buy the video game giant Activision Blizzard in an all-cash deal valued at $68.7 billion. The deal, Microsoft's biggest by far, would add popular franchises like Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, and Candy Crush to Microsoft's Xbox console business. Goldman Sachs said its profit fell 13% last quarter. The bank's bottom line was hurt by a decline in trading revenue as the pandemic-induced volatility in markets subsided. But a bright spot in Goldman's earnings report was an increase in investment banking revenue, thanks to strong mergers and acquisitions activity. And U.S. stock markets opened the shortened trading week sharply lower as investors become increasingly convinced that more interest rate hikes than previously expected are on the horizon. By late morning, the Dow Jones Industrials were down more than 500 points, or nearly 1.5%. The S&P 500 was also down 1.5%, and the Nasdaq was 1.75% lower.
We start here in Japan, where new coronavirus cases have hit a record high, spurred by the Omicron variant. The government plans to announce a quasi-state of emergency in Tokyo and 12 other prefectures, giving governors the power to beef up anti-infection measures. Authorities across Japan confirmed more than 32,000 infections on Tuesday. The previous record of nearly 26,000 cases was set in August. 3 prefectures are already using intensive measures to combat the surge: Okinawa, Yamaguchi, and Hiroshima. Soon, Tokyo, its neighbors, and several other prefectures could join them. The central government will consult experts before announcing an official decision on Wednesday.
We
will work closely with local governments to prevent a rapid spread of infections from overwhelming medical systems, and we will continue to tackle the situation with a strong sense of urgency.
Kishida says the government will set up temporary medical facilities and oxygen stations and send medical workers to hard-hit areas. Tokyo is seeing one of the nation's worst outbreaks. It surpassed 5,000 new infections on Tuesday, just 800 fewer than on the worst day of the pandemic. More than 10,000 infected people are now isolating at home. They all have mild symptoms or none at all. Hospitals are also beginning to see an uptick. More than 20% of beds set aside for coronavirus patients are full. If Tokyo's request for a quasi-emergency is granted, businesses may be asked to close early or place limits on customers. Osaka has not yet asked to take that step, but it is considering it. The prefecture reported nearly 5,400 cases on Tuesday, a new record. Next, to international relief efforts for Tonga. A huge underwater volcanic eruption has cut off virtually all communication between the Pacific Island nation and the outside world for days, and layers of thick ash continue to block help. New Zealand had hoped to airlift in drinking water and other supplies. Instead, surveillance aircraft confirmed the main airport remains unreachable. The eruption shot ash high into the air and created tsunami waves. Before and after images hint at the full extent of damage. Whole islands appear almost totally submerged. Many buildings look destroyed or missing. Others are coated in gray ash. The footage is further raising concern about possible deaths. The Reuters news agency quotes the Prime Minister's office as saying 3 deaths are confirmed so far. One is a 50-year-old British woman who was apparently swept away while trying to save her dogs. The other 2 are Tongan citizens. New Zealand says it has sent supplies by ship, but it'll take days for those necessities to reach the people who need them. Another urgent task is restoring communications, including a crucial undersea line severed in two places.
If there is still some volcanic activities, then we're looking at another week or so. So possibly 3 weeks before we have our internet communication again.
The eruption is still threatening the environment in the Pacific region. Satellite imagery shows clouds of sulfur dioxide, which could cause acid rain, moving westward toward Vanuatu and parts of Australia. The effects of the blast traveled 10,000 kilometers to South America. Waves caused a ship off Peru to spill crude oil, which washed up along about 2 kilometers of coastline. A Japanese military expert says North Korea's latest missile launches appear to signal that the country has entered the second cycle of its missile program, the development of weapons more difficult to intercept. North Korean media reported that the country test-fired tactical guided missiles on Monday. South Korean media say a photo of one of the missiles shows similarities with one in the U.S. arsenal. Analyses of other missiles launched by the North on Friday suggest they could be homegrown versions of Russia's Iskander, a short-range ballistic missile. University of Tokyo lecturer Koizumi Yu says the North may want missiles with different ranges for different objectives.
North Korea test-fired intermediate-range and long-range ballistic missiles in 2017. That was the first cycle. What they are doing now is probably the second cycle. They have started developing ballistic missiles that change their trajectories, making them more difficult to intercept.
Koizumi noted that the missiles launched this month came down in waters outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. He said this indicates that the North is trying to avoid a backlash from Japan, the U.S., or South Korea. Canada's health minister is hitting back at an official in China who claims the Omicron variant may be able to cross international borders via the postal system. Jean-Yves Duclos described the assertion that Beijing's first case may have come via a package from his country as extraordinary. Canadian media quoted local health authorities as saying the risk of infection from paper mail or packages, including those sent abroad, is extremely low. The Chinese capital reported its first Omicron case on Saturday. On Monday, a health official said the possibility it was brought in via overseas goods cannot be ruled out. The official said what appears to be the Omicron variant was found on some mail the infected person received from Canada. Reaction is growing after the Japanese government decided to allow a minor exception to the country's rigid border rules. A few dozen international students will finally be able to enter the country, but tens of thousands of others still have no idea when they can come to Japan. NHK World's Yamamoto Saori has the story.
It seems like there is not even talk about us. They just left us like in the side.
Beatrice Leganasi Okumura is among 147,000 students still waiting to get a visa for Japan. She's paying her own way to study at a language school in Tokyo. After the latest announcement, she feels deflated.
I can't believe they're just letting 87 people enter. It doesn't make any sense at all.
The government says it will allow 87 university students to enter Japan later this month. It's a small number, and it's an exclusive list. They all have government scholarships, and they need to be in a classroom to finish their final year.
Considering the public interest and the urgency of the matter, we've decided to allow those students to enter Japan on the condition that they take the necessary antivirus measures.
But the move doesn't change anything for most students who are paying their own tuition at universities or language schools. They are still shut out by the border ban. They have been waiting up to 2 years for a visa, and many are giving up. Uganasi Okumura has been taking online classes since October. She feels anxious about the uncertainty. She says she will drop out if she can't get into Japan by next semester.
I still have hope because I really want to go, but the expectations are really low. But Japan keeps surprising us with even lower decision making. And I'm not sure.
Academics are concerned too. More than 1,100 international students are stuck and waiting to study at the University of Tokyo. Professors say the government's latest move is hopeful, but it needs to open up much more.
The important thing is that we don't stop here. Each of us needs to remember that there are so many more students waiting outside of Japan. With 87 students being able to enter, it's not close to enough. We have to let all of them in.
The government says it will consider making more exceptions for individual cases. But students are running out of time and patience, and they're losing faith. Yamamoto Saori, NHK World, Tokyo.
Engineers have nearly finished testing a device designed to remove highly radioactive fuel debris from a damaged reactor at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Tokyo Electric Power Company plans to use the robotic arm inside the number 2 reactor. The 22-meter-long device weighs more than 4 tons and was developed in Britain. Testing got underway at a facility in Kobe last July. Among other things, the engineers have to make sure that the arm can be properly extended. 3 reactors at the Fukushima plant suffered meltdowns following the earthquake and tsunami in 2011. The plant is in the process of being decommissioned. The biggest hurdle is removing the highly radioactive debris inside them.
This is the world's first attempt of its kind and is extremely difficult. We want to overcome technical challenges step by step.
Once the testing is completed, the robot will be shipped to Fukushima Prefecture, where workers will spend about 6 months training on a mock-up of the reactor. Extreme heat continues to scorch parts of South America, including Paraguay. Our meteorologist Sayaka Mori has the details in World Weather.
Hello there. It's in the middle of summer in the southern hemisphere, and we have seen a lot of new records. For example, Florida and Uruguay saw 44.0 degrees on Friday, making it the national record, the tied national record. And Buenos Aires saw 41.5 degrees, making the second hottest day ever for the city. We have some video coming out of 2 locations. A heat wave has continued to hit central and southern regions of South America since last week. In Buenos Aires, people flocked to beaches and tried to find respite under the trees as temperatures soared into the 40s Celsius. Wildfires were also reported in parts of the country. Paraguay didn't fare any better during the weekend as the mercury pushed past the 40-degree Celsius mark. Weather experts say that this pattern is linked to La Nina that is taking place this year. Heat has eased in Buenos Aires, but it's not going to be easing. In fact, in parts of Uruguay as well as Paraguay, Asuncion 43 degrees is expected with a chance for thunderstorms on your Wednesday. Talking about the heat, national record high was set in Australia last week. The high rose to 50.7 degrees Celsius in Onslow, tying the national record set in 1960 last week. Onslow will see 33 on Wednesday, so 17 degrees cooler compared to what we saw last week. But a heat wave is gripping the Perth area. The temperatures will be around 40 degrees every day, at least into Saturday. A snowstorm has been affecting the Sea of Japan side of the country country, we are seeing a lot of snowfall. 71 centimeters of snow has fallen in 24 hours. More snow is possible every day, at least into the end of this week. And temperatures are going to be in the single digits once again in Tokyo and -1 in Sapporo. That's it for me. Stay safe.